What are the best and worst performing condominiums in the Toronto area right now? That's the question I'm going to be looking at on this week's video. My name is John Pasalis, president at Realosophy Realty in Toronto. You can catch all my latest writings and research on Toronto's housing market on our news site, movesmartly.com. If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button below to stay up to date on all our latest updates. So one of the things that's I think important to unpack is when we're looking at trying to understand the trends in the housing market, very rarely do we get any great insights by looking at this sort of high level numbers that we see in the news. Oftentimes we need to sort of slice the data in different ways, either by geography or house type or some other metric that's going to reveal more insights that are valuable. And this week's a very good example of that. So what we're going to be looking at is specifically at the condominium market, and we're going to be looking at this metric we call the months of inventory because it's a metric that really kind of helps us understand how over or undersupplied the market is. In short, we just look at the number of condominiums available for sale at the end of the month, look at the number that have sold in that month, and then divide them. So if there's 10 condominiums available for sale at the end of the month and 10 have sold, there's only 1 month of inventory. But if only 1 unit sold, we have 10 months of inventory. So the higher the inventory, the more oversupplied the market is, the more likely prices are to fall. The lower the inventory, the more competitive the market is. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at the months of inventory, but we're going to slice the condominium market into sort of segments based on their unit sizes. So the idea is we're looking at by unit size, which segments of the market are more oversupplied than others. So when we look at the latest trends, I'm going to be comparing October 2019 to October 2020's data. If we look at this latest chart, the blue shows us the months of inventory by unit size across a number of square foot ranges. And the smallest units on the left from 0 to 500 square feet. At the far right, we have 2,000 plus square feet. And what we find in the light blue is that the lowest months of inventory are for the smaller units. Makes sense. As the units get larger, they tend to get more expensive and inventory rises because those units usually take a little bit longer to sell. Now, when we fast forward and look at the data for 2020, we see a very different trend and an interesting one. The units that are the most oversupplied in the condominium market right now are actually the smallest units, 0 to 500 or 499 square feet. And as the units get larger, inventory actually tightens. It gets a little bit less supply. And the most undersupplied segment of the market is actually the 1,200 to 1,400 square foot condominium size. And then after it sort of bottoms out there, then inventory gradually increases again as units increase in size and in price range. So this is a very interesting trend and an important one to keep an eye on, because what it's telling us is that the smallest units today in the market are the ones that are sitting on the market a lot longer. And why is this happening? Likely it's happening because, with the pandemic, as more people are working from home, they're probably finding that 500 square foot units or 550 square feet are probably a little bit too small to live and work out of. And we're probably seeing an exodus out of those units, additional supply in those units. And that's causing this really big spike in inventory. Whereas the larger units, 1,200 to 1,400 square feet, are probably very functional for a couple or a small family. And those units are not sitting on the market as long. So what does this mean to us as buyers? Well, it means that if we're buying a unit that is sort of in this larger size, there's probably less downward pressure on prices. There's not a lot of inventory. Those units are moving relatively quickly. Whereas if we're looking at really the micro condos, that segment probably is more likely to see a little bit of downward pressure on prices. So it's important to remember that when we look at sort of the headlines about condominiums changes in prices, if condominium prices are down 9-10%, it doesn't mean every unit's down 9-10%. It means some units could be seeing a disproportionate decline in prices, while other ones are a little bit more stable. And the key is understanding which ones are going to be potentially a little bit more stable than others. And metrics like this give us clues. I mean, this isn't the end of this is just 1 month of data at the end of the day. But if this continues into the new year and we start to see inventory increases in the small condos, it's probably a good sign that those units are more likely to see a little bit more downward pressure on prices as we move into 2021. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, please post them below or send me an email at askjohn@movesmartly.com.